Spoštovane gledalke in dragi gledalci, lepo pozdravljeni. Skrajšan delovni teden je že za nami, a pred nami so še novosti iz Evropskega parlamenta. Danes bomo med drugim govorili tudi o evropskem proračunu za prihodnje leto. Ostanite z nami. Poslanci so v Štrasburu razpravljali o ogrožanju temeljnih pravic EU, preučili so delovni program komisije za leto 2017, razpravljali o nedavnem vrhu EU in napovedali prejemnika nagrade Saharova.
MEPs attend to some serious nuts and bolts of European politics for the plenary session in Strasbourg. The Commission's work programme next year, mid-term revisions to the EU's 5-year budget, protecting fundamental rights, and naming the Sakharov Prize winner. Many MEPs say a recent rollback of democratic values in Poland and Hungary reflects a wider erosion of fundamental rights in Europe. Now they want action. They're calling for a new mechanism to monitor the state of democracy, rule of law and fundamental rights in EU member states on an annual basis, and to propose ways of fixing breaches. They'll be voting on a draft resolution on Tuesday. There are two clear messages to the Commission on the EU's long-term spending plans: more financial headroom to meet unforeseen crises, such as disasters, refugees, terrorism or security, and a crisis fund must be well resourced. On Wednesday, MEPs discuss a mid-term revision of the 2014 to 2020 budget, known as the Multi-Annual Financial Framework, with Commissioner Kristalina Georgieva. They had hoped for more resources, but for the Commission, these remain unchanged. MEPs are hoping to wrap up negotiations by the end of the year. They'll also be voting on the 2017 budget. Wednesday also sees a big debate with Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk, presidents of the European Commission and Council respectively, on the outcome of the October summit of heads of state and government. Key issues: EU-Russia relations, including the sanctions regime, expanding European defence options, and the troubled EU-Canada trade agreement, CETA. A bit of Brexit, no doubt, also. Much, if not all of this, will inevitably spill into 2017, and the Commission's work programme for next year will come under scrutiny in a debate on Tuesday. Alive to current European political winds, MEPs say social rights, jobs and security should head the priorities. Now, in brief, some other items coming up in plenary. A resolution before Parliament on Wednesday seeks to place mandatory limits on industrially produced trans fatty acids, which risk cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's and obesity. Following the historic nuclear deal with Iran, MEPs want the EU to shift relations to a new level, expanding trade and de-escalating regional tensions. The debate is on Monday and a vote on Tuesday. The threats, acts of aggression and restrictions that journalists face in Turkey are debated on Wednesday. Since the failed coup, 90 journalists have been jailed and more than 2,500 have lost their jobs. Finally, the winner of the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought 2016 is to be announced. The candidates are Can Dündar, former editor-in-chief of the leading Turkish opposition newspaper Cumhuriyet, Mustafa Cemilev, champion for decades of Crimean Tatar rights, and jointly Nadia Murad Basi Taha and Lamia Aji Bashar, both advocates for the Yazidi community in Iraq and survivors of sexual enslavement by so-called Islamic State. The announcement is due to be made on Thursday, and that's it for this roundup of key moments in plenary. Enjoy the week.
Nekateri pravijo, da je NATO dovolj, drugi so prepričani, da mora EU razviti svoje vojaške zmogljivosti. Pogovor z vodilnim evropskim poslancem za to vprašanje.
How should Europe respond to the threat of terrorism, conflict in the Middle East and Russia? Should it build military capability alongside, but in part beyond NATO? Many, like Britain, say no, NATO is enough. Others say yes, it must. There are things NATO can't do. This week, the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament is voting on a report calling for action. Among those behind it, former Estonian Foreign Minister, now Liberal MEP Urmas Paet, and former senior military officer Jeffrey Van Orden. So, why now for this report?
First, of course, is the situation inside Europe and around Europe, because lots of new risks, be it terrorism also inside Europe, or new conflicts around Europe in south and east, and also increased aggressive behavior of Russia. If you look what happened and still is happening in Ukraine, what is happening in Syria.
I suppose many would say that the United Kingdom has been the most hesitant about European Defence Union. We don't want to see a European army. Maybe with the prospect of the United Kingdom now leaving the European Union, they see this as an opportunity. And indeed, I've heard some of the Ayatollahs of European integration who exist in this Parliament have specifically said this.
Is there political will in member states for stronger defence cooperation?
More and more European countries actually feel and understand the same, that they really have to do more. If you look at the moment, for example, NATO, around 75% of all NATO costs are covered by the United States, and Europe only around 25%. I don't simply think that it is fair enough.
I have noticed a little bit of a coming together. For example, I think some of my French colleagues have real dilemmas because on the one hand, some of them are very pushy about European integration and the EU being involved in defence. On the other hand, they are very protective of France's sovereign status. If we want cooperative structures between countries, well, I have to say, these have existed for years, decades.
The European Commission is expected soon to propose a European Defence Action Plan. What should be in it?
We have serious threats which are common to all of our countries and more widely among the democracies. We need solidarity among the democracies. We have a strongly functioning defence organisation. It's called NATO. It guarantees the commitment of the United States to the security of the European nations. That's what's important, that's what has credibility, and that's what we need to be strengthening.
We have to be much more independent in Europe for our security and defence, but looking at what's all is going on in Europe, I simply think that yes, European Union, European countries must be much more ready.
How can member states be persuaded to invest more in defence, above, for example, 2% of GDP?
2% of GDP for defence. We all know that it's a target for NATO, but I think that it also should be target for the EU, so that also all EU countries will contribute more for defence, because the quality will not come without certain level of quantity as well.
A lot of the European member countries, the majority of them, are spending less than half of that amount on defence. I suspect some of them think, oh well, if the EU gets involved in defence, we can spend even less. Let the EU pick up some of the bills and that. That's frankly not going to work. What we need to see is each of our nations, each of our member states, investing more in defence.
What concrete steps can be taken to give impetus to a new NATO-EU strategic partnership?
I guess it is some so-called civilian missions, also supporting military missions or humanitarian missions. Secondly, there could be certain situations and areas where maybe NATO flag is more irritating than EU flag on the ground. So that this is second option, and thirdly, we also should understand that not all EU member states are NATO members, but we also should engage these countries much more also to our security cooperational frameworks than so far.
If it really wants to complement NATO military capabilities, what the EU should be doing is focusing on its civil capabilities. All those other instruments that it has at its disposal, financial, political, and so on, where they can get involved in crisis management, post-conflict redevelopment, conflict resolution, humanitarian assistance, all of these things. The EU could play a very useful role if only it would focus its efforts into those areas and actually get them right, because they can't even get those right at the moment. Then I think that would be a good contribution.
And the way it seems to be coming.
Evropski proračun za leto 2017. Koliko potrebuje Evropa? Poslanci so sprejeli stališče o proračunu za leto 2017, s katerim želijo dati Evropi sredstva, ki jih potrebuje za obvladovanje izzivov.
€161.8 billion is the total amount of the draft budget the European Parliament has set for funding EU policies in 2017. The MEPs want to give Europe the means it needs to meet its challenges.
Wir wollen zeigen, was getan werden kann, wenn man den Haushalt mobilisiert und die vorhandenen Möglichkeiten komplett nutzt.
Le projet qui nous est soumis propose des avancées budgétaires significatives pour rencontrer les grands défis auxquels l'Union européenne doit faire face et qui sont autant de nécessités. La nécessité de relancer la croissance et l'investissement, la nécessité de soutenir les producteurs laitiers victimes de la baisse des prix et de l'embargo russe, la nécessité d'adresser un message positif à la jeunesse européenne.
Not to mention the migration and security crisis rocking the Union. But the European Parliament does not decide the EU budget alone. The 28 member states also have their say. And for them, the coffers are empty, and the MEPs should revise their expectations down by €5.4 billion.
The Council is acting as if the world never changed. It wants to cut next year's budget without much of a strategic consideration of our priorities. And this simply does not make sense, especially now when money is tighter than ever before.
The European Parliament's draft budget paves the way for what promised to be stormy negotiations with the member states. An agreement should be reached by the 17th of November 2016.
Zagotavljanje dostopnosti spletnih mest in aplikacij za vse. Parlament želi zagotoviti, da ima tudi 80 milijonov Evropejcev invalidov dostop do spletnih strani in aplikacij javnega sektorja.
Maurizio used to work as a freelance journalist, but now he is the press officer for Italy at the European Parliament. This week, he is in Strasbourg for the plenary session. Maurizio, who has been blind since birth, takes a special interest in one of the items on the MEP's agenda.
Meetings, channels, themes,
if I hadn't had a computer equipped with assistive technology, I wouldn't be able to be here today to do the job I'm doing. I wouldn't have been able to be a journalist.
Even so, there are still many internet sites that are not accessible for disabled people or elderly. Maurizio has often ran into trouble.
If you have to pay a bill, maybe you want to select the period where you want to give, your actual consumption, and you cannot make it because maybe, I don't know, you cannot click on the submit button.
The European Parliament wants to make it mandatory for all public sector organisations to run websites that are accessible to everyone. According to the MEP Dita Sharantsova, 80 million disabled people would benefit from this.
We will get rid of the bizarre situation when people are asked to pay their taxes online, but the website is not accessible to all citizens. It will help also employees at their working place, because all the information intranet will have to be accessible to them. Also to mothers that want to follow the websites of the schools.
For Maurizio, another disabled person, this is only a first step that should be followed by website accessibility of the private sector, e-commerce, insurance and banking.
Valonijin prvotni ne, sporazumu CETA. Kakšni so bili odzivi na prvotno nasprotovanje Valonije sporazumu v Evropskem parlamentu?
I am afraid that we won't be able to continue to negotiate free trade agreements if we do not prove that we are very serious about protecting European consumers, workers and companies. I still hope that Belgium will prove that it is a consensus-building champion and that we will be able to finalize this agreement soon.
Wichtig ist, dass zu einer Einigung in Belgien kommt, damit das Königreich seine Bereitschaft bekunden kann, den Vertrag zu unterzeichnen. Wann dies passiert, ist weniger wichtig, als dass es passiert. Wir sind für freien Handel, aber diesen freien Handel kann man nicht um jeden Preis herbeizwingen wollen.
Wir haben Millionen Menschen ohne Arbeit, vor allem junge Menschen auf diesem Kontinent ohne Arbeit. Wenn wir Jobs kreieren wollen, dann brauchen wir Wachstum. Und Wachstum werden wir nicht angesichts der demografischen Entwicklung im Inneren bekommen, sondern nur mit mehr Handel. Und deswegen muss man sagen, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, das ist Versagen. Was lernen wir daraus? Für die Zukunft muss klar sein, Europathemen müssen im Europäischen Parlament verantwortet werden und sonst nirgends.
Non mi convince, si accusano i valloni di fermare il CETA e non si dice nulla ad Orban che insiste nel no ai ricollocamenti. La posizione dei valloni è una posizione di richiesta di chiarimenti ed io mi unisco alle voci che chiedono che in queste ore si possa arrivare a quei chiarimenti che possano portare al trattato commerciale più progressista che noi abbiamo potuto firmare.
If the EU cannot even reach an agreement with a country such as Canada, a country with similar environmental and labour standards, what hope do we have for telling the rest of the world that the EU is open for business?
If more time is needed, then more time is needed. It's not the date, but the result that matters. However, we cannot unpick the work that has been done because trade is essential for our prosperity. The winners are China and Russia and other countries because they will get to set the standards and not Europe.
Οι λαοί είπαν όχι και με τους αγώνες τους περιθωριοποίησαν τη συμφωνία TTIP. Αυτό που επιβεβαιώνεται στις τελευταίες μέρες είναι ότι το Συμβούλιο και η Επιτροπή θέλουν να επαναφέρουν μέσω της TTIP από την πίσω πόρτα, μέσω της ΣΕΤΑ, την TTIP από την πίσω πόρτα. Εμείς ως ΓΚΟΕ χαιρετίζουμε τη θαραλέα στάση της περιφερειακής κυβέρνησης και του Κοινοβουλίου της Βαλλονίας που είπαν όχι στα εκβιαστικά τελεσίγραφα για υπογραφή της ΣΕΤΑ.
Les élus francophones de Belgique se sont emparés du CETA et l'ont décortiqué comme peu l'ont fait en Europe. Non. Contrairement à ce qu'on voudrait bien nous faire croire, la Wallonie n'est pas isolée, bien au contraire. Faut-il rappeler que 1500 villes et communes européennes se sont déclarées hors TTIP et CETA, qu'une majorité d'Autrichiens, d'Allemands, de Français, de Slovènes sont opposés au CETA. La politique commerciale ne peut plus être décidée en secret. Cette politique commerciale retrouvera la confiance de nos citoyens. Le non wallon au CETA est un oui à une Europe citoyenne.
If we can do a deal like that with Mexico, why on earth wouldn't we do it with our most important trading global partner?
Voici que l'Assemblée wallonne décide de faire ce pourquoi elle est élue, ce qui d'ailleurs vous stupéfait, défendre les Wallons. Incroyable!
No one will change the fact that the EU is still the union of the states and not institutions.
Pa smo pri koncu še ene oddaje Teden v Evropski uniji. Spoštovane in spoštovani, hvala za pozornost in prijeten večer še naprej. Nasvidenje prihodnji petek.